Hello, everybody. I'm Telly's greatest fan, an autistic, bisexual, mentally ill writer and fan artist. And today I wanted to make a video analysis about Entrapdak or Entrapta and Hordak and disability representation. This is my first video analysis, so I'm a bit nervous. I hope this isn't too much in my voice. But the topic intrigued me so much that I had to do it, and I'm not comfortable with showing my face, so you can only see this manga face in the video. Trigger warnings are for suicidal thoughts. Oh god, I can't pronounce this. Sorry, English isn't my first language. Ableism, and at the very end, there's also a small part that's not safe for work. Yeah, since the first time I watched the series, I've been thinking about how much Entrapta and Hordak's representation means for me in terms of disability representation. But for some reason, that's not an especially widespread meta topic in a fandom. And I really couldn't understand it, because for me it's so obvious and so comes so clearly from the topic at hand, but maybe it's only so obvious because I'm autistic. I don't know. Okay, first about the basics. I am so glad about this representation. So Entrapta is canonically autistic. It's actually even in her character sheets. I linked that in the description. And possibly has also ADHD. And there even is a scene where she's stimming in front of a screen. So stimming is certain repetitive patterns of, I don't know, hand movement, body movement, stuff like that, that either calms an autistic person or that they do when they're really happy. In this example, Entrapta does that because she's so excited about learning about the portal. And then there's Hordak, and he's physically disabled, as is relatively easily seen as soon as his armor is off. It is not really specified what exactly it is, but maybe that's also because he himself does not really know what it is. And yes, they're both villains, and there is this long-standing tradition of villains having disabilities to show how evil they are, because there is, I think it's still from the time of the Nazis, that there is this idea that a broken Wong body can only have a broken Wong mind, which is really gross, but it's still in the consciousness of society, basically, and it's still in many, many villains. But in their case, I am not really sure what to think about it, to be honest, but in their case, it's not really that they are villains because they are disabled, but that they are villains because of how shitty the society treated them and other factors. On Tumblr, I found a very good test for disability representation. I'm really sure you all know the Bechdel test, which is for representation of women in media. And this one is basically the Bechdel test modified for disability representation. Version 1 is there is a disabled character, which we have with Entrapta, who's autistic, and Hordak, who's physically disabled. 2, who wants something. Entrapta wants to gather her knowledge of science and build better machines and robots and build a portal. And Hordak wants to prove himself worthy to fight in the army of Horde Prime again. 3, besides revenge, cure, or death. Entrapta's goals, science is even against her own well-being sometimes, and it has almost nothing to do with her disability except for that her special interest. For Hordak, it's a bit more complicated because it is motivated from his disability, but not really that he wants a cure, but that society, aka Horde Prime, brought him this idea into his mind that he is not worth something unless he does certain things. So I think this still counts as fitting this criteria. And 4 is and tries to get it, which they both do. They both try to meet these goals and undergo problems and are not passive characters. And then there is a second version of this, a newer version, where one is there is a disabled character again. Their disabilities are shown in the series. 2, who strives for their own goal. Entraptas strives for scientific knowledge, and Hordak strives for conquering Etheria. And 3, not motivated by a tragedy of their disability. For Entrapta, this is a clear pass because she wants science. This had nothing to do with her being autistic. For Hordak, it's a bit unclear, but because it is a tragedy for him, but it's not the disability itself, but the reaction of others to it. So I think it's still a pass, even if a really, really narrow one. And 4, and they are still alive and disabled at the end. Again, Entrapta passes that really easily. She's both alive at the end, and she's still autistic and has not been cured. And Hordak is still physically disabled at the end, but is more or less killed. But I'm pretty sure it will be not permanently, so I think it's also a pass. This whole test was created by the Tumblr user Omnicorn. I hope I pronounced that correctly, and I will link that in the description. I'm just so glad to finally see myself on screen. Someone who has the same traits and problems as I do. I mean, there are accidentally other relatable characters, such as Tilly from Star Trek Discovery, Spock from Star Trek The Original Series, Data from Star Trek The Next Generation, or Lanier from Babylon 5, but it's never canonically with them. And I only know three. other characters at all in all the media I ever consumed who are canonically autistic and well portrayed. Think about that. It's intensely isolating starting to believe one just isn't hero material because of how one is, when one never sees oneself in the media one sees. Thinking one is too selfish, too cold, not quite human enough, and all these other ableist ideas shared by articles and media. I can't actually speak for physically disabled people because I'm not physically disabled, obviously, but I'm pretty sure the representation for them is just as shitty as for us. But what intrigued me even more is that both of them together as a relationship between two people who are disabled in very different ways. One single accurate disabled character is already very rare, and a disabled character in a happy, healthy relationship is even more rare, because that plays into this ableist idea that disabled people can't contribute to a relationship and so burdens to everyone around them. And I hate this idea so much, and this hurt me so much, and I think it's been a very large contributor to how bad my mental health became at times, because it's just hearing or reading again and again that who you are is a burden, and that the people you loved would be better off without you. It's just and furthermore, there is this idea that disabled people are somehow unfinished or childlike, and so both can't have sexual relationships or meaningful adult relationships at all. And actually, that is something that is actually seen in the criticism of antis against this ship, who say all the time that Entrapta can't decide for herself because she's autistic, and it's pedophilia. What Tumblr seems to say for like every relationship out there. It's pretty annoying. Or that it's a power imbalance, and they don't even realize just how disgusting this is. To say that because someone is autistic, they can't decide for themselves. That's a really, really harmful trope and really condescending, and I hate this. But well, that's antis. What do you expect? And it's even more rare to see two disabled people in a relationship with each other, because of all of the above, and maybe also some kind of surprise they don't need us towards the able-bodied neurotypical watchers. And again, it's so refreshing to see that on screen. Relationships like mine. Because the thing able-bodied neurotypical people often forget is how isolating being disabled can be. Because everyone does things one way, but you don't do it another way because you can't do it that way, or it just doesn't work for you. And this is because of how environment treats you, not really from a disability itself most of the time. It can be really harsh, like being outcast for showing problems in something for showing problems in something you should function, like it is for Hordak, like failing at tasks you think that determine your worth, and not daring to do things because it would make you too vulnerable. And I know this very much too, even in a much, much lesser extent. I actually tie myself worth close to my academic success to compensate for my autism. It can also be being not understood and ridiculed and failing at relationships and friendships, like it is for many neurotypical and mentally ill people. So this scene on Beast Island where Entrapta gives in and these roots grow out of her, this was just so painful for me, but also kind of healing, because I know this feeling so much. It's this thought of, I can't hold friendships, nobody really cares about me. Why not just give up and die? Both of these things hurt and takes its toll. One single instance does not seem like much, but repeated, it just lets you seek the fault with yourself. Because if different people do it to different times, but I am always there, it has to be me, right? Also, there is this underlying message in common ideas and media that you are worthless and a burden because of your disability. It's hard to understand how damaging for friends and acquaintances who are not under all this stuff. And then you feel alone, not just because of your missing social sense that can make friendships hard to maintain, but also because they don't understand why you feel so worthless and a burden and hate yourself so much. But here in Shira, you actually have two disabled people who feel wrong and like failures, finding acceptance and comfort in each other. It's so touching and healing even, how Entrapta and Hordak understand these feelings of being broken and not enough in each other, despite their very different disabilities. And so they reassure each other that they are not a defect and a failure for it. They understood each other's pain, but because they know it so well for themselves, they were able to help each other out of it. And that's really beautiful. I mean, recovering takes long, more than just one scene, but that's the beginning. And I still remember what a wonderful moment it was for me, myself, to see the whole of me in another person for the first time, knowing that I'm not alone anymore. And I'm very glad for the two of them that they were allowed to have that. The last part is slightly not safe for work, so more about the fandom than the series itself, because it's a children's show and it can, by its very nature, show sex of its characters as such. But that's what fan fiction and fan art is for. I just love the huge amount of fan work for them. Especially how the Entrapdak fandom treats them as consenting sexual adults, not as if they had... sorry. Not as if they had to be protected from that. Except for asexual interpretations, but asexuality isn't the absence of something, but knowing that you don't want something. It's so rare to see sexual disabled people because of this infantilization I talked about earlier. And it's so wonderful to read, to see them explore that part of themselves, not as disabled people having sex, or look at how special it is because they are disabled, but just as themselves, as an experiment, like they treat most things in life. Of course, it's a bit awkward because there's actually this widespread headcanon in fandom that they were both virgins. And of course, if one starts from that, it's a bit awkward, and then one of course has to take Hordak's physical disability into account, because sex is just physically exhausting sometimes. Or maybe Entraptas' sensory issues also play a role in that and interfere. But I actually mean that they are treated as people. And I also really, really love just how much the fandom is horny for both of them. And I mean, I can very much understand that, because it's one of these ships where you are glad that you're bisexual, because you can find both of them hot at the same time, and then them two together is even more hot. And Entrapta with her sharp features and wiry build, and she has an actually really sweet personality. And Hordak with these cheekbones and his hips, and it's actually kind of awkward sometimes and really cute in that, which one wouldn't have expected in the first season, but he is. And I love how the fandom treats them as people they desire, and not as something special, if that makes sense. Also, I really love how Entrapta is allowed to be dominant, and Hordak is allowed to be submissive. And even though this is traditionally the other way around, and I actually know a few ships that have a similar dynamic, but where the fandom is disgusted by that, or treats it as abusive, or stuff like that. And here it is not like this, but they just accept it and play with it, and it's beautiful. And also really healing for someone who doesn't fit into this traditional expectation of sexuality either. I especially love this fan art where Entrapta ties him up with her hair, and he's a bit confused and shocked, but very much into it, obviously. And she likes it very much too, and it's just wonderful to see a woman like that and not have her ridiculed or looked at strangely for that, but just accepted that is just how she is. But that's another topic. So in conclusion, I really wish there was more representation like them, but I love how they are treated by the fandom, or at least this part of fandom. The antis obviously don't get all these things and play very much into ableism. I actually have a Tumblr post with most of what I said here in the description, and also some videos I found really helpful for doing this, and of course the link to the fan art.